Well, I'm going to read from the Council of Constance, and you are going to say, why? Why? What is in that council that's so relevant to this discussion? Well, it's very relevant because, you see, there was this proto-reformer called Jan Hus. Now, Jan Hus was a heretic. He was condemned by the Council of Constance, but furthermore, he was condemned for his ecclesiological heresies. Jan Hus was very acquainted with John Wycliffe, and they both are considered to be the fathers of the Protestant Reformation. You know, people like Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, they picked up on these guys, this diet here, the Hus and Wycliffe. But especially Hus was particularly influential in the Protestant ecclesiology, the Protestant view on ecclesiology, because basically almost half of his attacks were on the papacy. And this links us to the sedevacantists, because sedevacantists would claim that they uphold the papacy, that they uphold the dogmas pertaining to the papacy, you see. But they fail to connect the dots here when we criticize their approach to the current situation in the Roman Catholic Church. As you know, I'm no longer a Catholic, a Roman Catholic, or what I would prefer to call Latin Catholic. I was a sedevacantist until I realized this. So if you're going to accept the papacy, you have to accept all the articles pertaining to the papacy. Not just the ones that suits your position. It doesn't work like that. Okay? Otherwise, you would be falling into heresy. So we're back to square one again. I mean, what differentiates you from the typical Novosordite? In any case, the Novosordite here would be more consistent than you are, because he would have at least the correct ecclesiology, if not the correct theology, of course, which he doesn't, or she doesn't. Let's be inclusive here. So, according to Constance, sedevacantists would be Hussite heretics, and I'm going to prove that. So the Council of Constance cites 30 articles by Jan Hus, which they condemn, and relevant to this are articles 27 and 29, which I'm going to read to you in full. So 27 states, Jan Hus states, "There's not the least proof that there must be one head ruling the church in spiritual matters." Is there a period here? No, there isn't. I mean, if there was a period here right after spiritual matters, it would make sense, right? There's no need to further up this idea or quote the full statement, but they do. He goes on, who always lives with the church militant. So let's unpack it. Let's unpack this here. There is not the least proof that there must be one head ruling the entire church in spiritual matters, and who always lives with the church militant. Not only that there must be one head, but that it always rules. Now, documents, my friend, they don't rule. Bulls don't rule. Encyclicals don't rule. I rule, I'm sorry, I'm kidding. No, people. Human beings are the ones that exert ruling, acts of ruling. Those things I just mentioned, they are acts pertaining to ruling. But they're not rulers. They're not rulers. The rulers are human beings, living human beings in that. Now, why is this relevant? Because basically, sedevacantists would claim that, well, after Pius XII, and judging from the current situation, we might not get another pope until the day of judgment, well, because we're basically in the end times. So we're in extraordinary circumstances, extraneous circumstances. There will not be any more popes or bishops. But this is wrong, because according to this, that's the same idea that Jan Hus professed, which was condemned. So according to this, you would fall for the same heresy. You would be deemed a semi-hussite. You see. But well, let's go ahead and quote number 29. Number 29 states, "The apostles and faithful priests of the Lord strenuously governed the church in spiritual matters necessary for salvation before the office of Pope was introduced." Is there a period here? No, there isn't. He goes on to say, and they would continue to do this until the day of judgment, if, which is very possible, there are two dashes here, if dash, which is very possible, dash, there is no pope. Now, I know some of you might object, well, it's talking about there being no pope and the faithful priests and apostles ruling in the place of the pope. That's not what it says. I mean, even if you were to interpret it that way, you would still be very much condemned, because basically what you're claiming is that there's no ruler here. I mean, we're just a bunch of laity with some rogue priests and episcopi vagantes ruling. It's even worse, because at least here it kind of, presupposes that there might be some ordinary jurisdiction, but there's not under your current church. And furthermore, even if this was not the case, why would they highlight this? Why would they put dashes here when he says, which is very possible, that there might not be a pope? And remember, you have to read this in line with the article I read earlier, where it says that the pope always lives with the church militant. That was basically rejected by Jan Hus, because according to him, the pope was not necessary. The pope was not essential to the church's constitution. That's the point. He states that because the pope existed after the apostolic period. There was no necessity of there being a pope at the day of judgment, because it's very clear it's talking about the day of judgment, not about some end times of 60 plus years with no pope and mark of the beast and all that. It's talking about the day of judgment, the end of time, the day of judgment when Jesus comes again to judge. And he says that at that point there might not be a pope. And this was condemned. I mean, even if you could claim perhaps, well, there might not be a living pope, but at least the possibility of electing a pope. Otherwise, you have a defected see. If you have no possibility of electing a successor to Peter, you have a defected see. So there's no more papacy, folks. I mean, and it's not just this document. It's not just Constance. I mean, Vatican I itself, just reading Vatican I should make it very clear that you're not supposed to believe that there might be a basis for a popeless church for 60 plus years with no possibility of further succession. And it's very stressful on the fact that it's perpetual successor. I mean, there has to be a perpetual succession of the papacy. I mean, the interregnum must presuppose succession, not defection. So if there's no possibility of electing a pope, that succession was effectively interrupted. And that is not supposed to happen, according to Vatican I. And this idea was also prevalent at the time of Pius VI in Authorem Fidei. He also stresses on the fact that Peter, if you read the preamble of Authorem Fidei, you see that he states very clearly that Peter was not intended to abandon the government of the church. Now again, documents don't rule, documents don't govern, they are acts of government, but they don't govern. What governs is a human being who boasts of being the successor of Peter in this case. So, in summary, you're busted. Busted. What are we going to do now? Are we going to apostatize? Or apostatize? I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm having like a bit of a blank here. No, you basically would have to re-examine the evidence, look up church history, read the fathers, and perhaps you might find what you were missing all along. I mean, there are alternatives. It's just not where you thought they would be, basically. And yes, I'm talking about the Orthodox Church. The Orthodox have been saying for 1 millennia the same thing that you are saying now. Basically, that we don't need a pope. It's not essential to the church's constitution. And the gates of hell would not prevail. If you deemed the papacy to be necessary, absolutely, which it is according to the Roman Catholic system, the gates of hell would pretty much smashed the church to smithereens. It's time to come back home. I did. I did. Why don't you? Why don't you? God bless.